Okay, welcome everybody. So, the topic for today's session is going to be sexual health and pleasure. And my name is Aishwarya, and I work as a communication coordinator for the Humsafar Trust. Today, joined here with us is Tanisha R, whose preferred pronouns are she and they. They identify as a queer Bahujan sex educator, and they are the co-founder of Sangya Project, which is India's first queer-owned sex tech company, and they are also the creators of India's first intimate massager. Tanisha, it's lovely to have you here. Is there anything you would like to say before we begin?
I'm just really happy to be here and thank you for having me. Humsafar Trust is a place that has been, on the radar for so long. As queer people, it's one of the names you hear very early on, and I've been following their work also for a very long time. So it's just really interesting to be able to work with and brainstorm together about what we can work on.
Yeah, it's really lovely to have you here because also I feel like a topic like sexual health and pleasure is something that people often overlook, like ध्यान नहीं देते उतना लोग, people don't care, or people care but they are a little scared and they don't quite know how to approach it. So it would be really
Yeah.
great and enlightening if we could like discuss about it and you can like take us through. So to begin with, I would like to understand from you, like when it comes to like what is the importance of sexual health and pleasure in our overall like well-being?
It's definitely more important than we are told it is. I feel like the assumption is that sexual health is only important to discuss when it comes to family planning or STI prevention and STI awareness. And those are very, very important factors of sexual health as well. But it's not the only facets of sexual health that need to be discussed. When you are very, very young itself, there are conversations that are happening around you about your body, about puberty, about how that will affect the way you socialize with other people. And I think when those conversations are not addressed in a healthy manner, it makes you feel like you will only have support to figure out your sexual health and your identity after you get married. And abhi to the situation is such that even marriage or that kind of lifelong relationship is not something that everybody has in their life or everybody wants in their life. So I think it's very important that we have this conversation because sexual health is something that it can affect the way you sleep at night. It can affect your diet. It can affect the way you build a relationship with your body. And when those primary factors of your identity and your life are affected, it also then affects your ability to make friends and have relationships with other people or connect with other people, to connect with your community and your family. And uske baad there's also a ripple effect on your confidence when you seek work or what kind of work you do. So there's just it has such a strong impact on almost every part of our life. And ye nahi ki it only affects you if you are having sex or once you become sexually active. Even if you are not someone who has a relationship with sex or likes sex at all, you still need that kind of information and awareness and support when it comes to taking care of your body and understanding your identity.
Like I get where you're coming from, and I really like agree with that. Like even when I was young, like the one thing I've realized is about particularly sex education in India is that you learn a lot of things much later in life, unfortunately. Like
Yeah.
like for instance, in my example, I learned about HPV vaccine when I was in my early 20s. But I was already sexually active. I was sexually already sexually active before that, and it would have been great to like know about that, or like what is a
Yeah.
pap smear, like those simple kind of things, because it does affect your body. And then like I have realized over time, you do get like sad or like stressed or anxious, which is something I think we often tend to like overlook.
Yeah, I think I was having this conversation with quite a few people before as well, that abstinence cannot be the perspective from which we teach people about sex, regardless of what age we're speaking to, right? Because for me, the comparison I like to make is that if you're teaching someone how to cross the road, or about general road safety, you can't tell them that the safest way to walk past a road is by not crossing it at all. And that's what abstinence is. Like, it sounds to me कि you're saying कि नहीं, आपको, if you want to avoid pregnancy, you want to avoid STIs, you want to avoid difficult relationships, don't have them only. And that is not practical advice. And simultaneously हम लोग, that strategy that we have कि शादी के बाद सिखाएंगे, या फिर जब बच्चे पैदा करना है तब भी हम लोग सिखाएंगे about safety and prevention and everything. That logic is also so flawed, because sometimes it's like, accident होने के बाद I will talk to you about road safety. So it's too late by that point, and you can't then go back in time and undo any of the things you wish you had known now when you were younger. So that's why I think you have to operate under the assumption that anyone is likely to need this information, even if at a young age they already know, suppose ki theek hai, meko, I'm not interested in sex, or I'm not feeling sexually attracted to people, this is not something I want to do. We still have to give them that information. They need to know what happens with their bodies, what is going on, what kind of resources they have outside their family, or outside their schools, or outside their colleges, so that they know that they have this kind of support to access. And yeah, I think that just working from that perspective of fear, saying that okay, if I scare this person, then they will not have sex until they get married, is a very very flawed idea. Because डर तो मतलब थोड़ी देर के लिए लगता है, but then eventually curiosity also takes over, or sometimes the connection you have to a person takes over, the excitement, that love, that pleasure, that play, वो सब आ जाता है, and then you're just very excited to explore that bond, whether it's a very serious long term thing or a casual thing. So the information has to be something that you have, regardless of what choices you make in your future. You should have those tools.
I completely agree, because also I feel like what happens is, like, let's say you're in a surrounding where it's completely all about abstinence, but then you do end up having sex, and then you don't know what to do. Like, you don't know that, okay, I need to use a condom, or like, what if a condom breaks during sex? Like, what do I do then? Like, these things people don't know, and then they end up taking like drastic measures. The other thing is, I feel like, because when you look at sex from that lens, it completely takes pleasure out of the picture, and it just becomes like a tool. It's to make a baby, or like, that the end product needs to be a baby, like, and that's obviously not the case. And
Yeah.
I think it also, like, it makes people very anxious. So, when they do have like kinks or fantasies, they don't really know, how to approach it, or how to, like, maybe talk to their partner about it. So, is there anything that, like, any advice that you could give people, like, how can they talk to their partner? Or let's say it's someone who's new, someone who's just, started exploring, and they don't quite know how to approach their partner and talk about these things. So, is there any advice that, you could just give people?
Yes, there is, but I also want to add a little bit before that, because of what you said about that fear around condoms, or even the confusion around it. I remember when I had just become sexually active as well. I had partners who would say things like, "Oh, condoms are uncomfortable for me," or "Condoms are, I'm too big for a condom." ऐसे चीजें बोलते थे. And I was very young यार, तो मुझे नहीं पता था that ऐसे लोग, like, लोग ऐसे ही बोलते हैं, and there's no truth to that matter at all, because उससे पहले तो मैंने condom देखा भी नहीं था ठीक से. So it was very easy then for people to say these things, and for me to then think, oh, okay, so then safety is my responsibility. I am alone in this. ध्यान सिर्फ मुझे देना है, and if anything happens in terms of pregnancy or STI, it is fully my responsibility and fully my fault. So then my full focus was only on whatever could go wrong in that moment, instead of me actually being present to have any kind of fun with my partner, or even for myself, to experience my body in a new way. So I think that's also a point I wanted to add about why fear is very distracting from pleasure and play. But in terms of advice for what we can do, I think when again the वो mentality or वो culture यहाँ पे is so strong that if you have casual sex, then you are not a committed person, or if you're having sex before marriage, then it means that there is something wrong with you, or you are a pervert or something like that. ऐसे like a lot of stereotypes are attached कि तुम शादी से पहले sex क्यों कर रहे हो, या फिर if you're doing it without the intention of having children with your partner, then what is the point of having sex? क्यों कर रहे हो sex? जरूरी नहीं है. um, so I think with that, there is a lot of difficulty for people to actually come out of their comfort zone and say that, no, I just like sex because I like the way it makes me feel about my body, or I like the way it makes me feel about my partner, or I like the way we connect when we have sex together. So I feel like one of the starting points is to just take that little space for yourself, and to give yourself some time and space to say that, okay, theek hai, I'm having these sexual thoughts or I'm having these sexual desires, and for as long as they are fantasies or desires that I have for a consenting partner, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having these thoughts and having these curiosities. And even if I change my mind about these fantasies in a few months, or if I do it in real life and I realize that I don't like it, that's also okay. It keeps changing over time and it's fine. But it's okay for me to have these questions about myself or these desires for myself. So I feel like having that space first, and maybe also hopefully having friends or partners or other people in your life who can have these conversations with you and sort of keep that space with you and say, acha, you're thinking about these things, even I think about them sometimes, or acha, I to think about something completely different and this is what it's like for me. When you have that kind of community support and connection also, it makes that desire more normal for you. And then to simultaneously communicate with the people who you want to explore these fantasies with or explore sex with, then you take that step. But I think the major part of this entire process is to just remember that, one, there are very, very real reasons for which you may be scared, or you may feel ashamed, or you may feel very lonely in some of the feelings you are having, but that doesn't make it wrong. And also to try and remember that at the same time, your partner may be having some of those fears as well. So maybe that's why it may be difficult for them to share that conversation with you or share those desires with you. And to just gently build that space where both of you can be a little scared and a little nervous together, and just slowly figure out what taking the next step feels like. I think that is a very safe and gentle way to sort of explore the space, and also make sure that you're coming into it for reasons that both of you can be comfortable with and happy about, and not feel like you're being pressured by someone externally to navigate sex in a certain way in your relationship.
I think I also realized that, as you were talking, a lot of shame and stigma attached to sex, but when it comes to queer sex, I feel like it just unfortunately like it's doubled and it's that much harder.
Yeah.
So, how do you think people can come or like deal with that anxiety? Let's say there is a person who's now finally okay with their sexual thoughts and they're like ready to like have sex. They've had the talk with their partner, but a lot of times people do feel like performance anxiety in bed. So like, how can people like go about that?
When it comes to that anxiety, that early stage anxiety of a new act or a new person or just newly becoming sexually active, brace yourself for the fact that there will be mistakes. There are a lot of there's a lot of content out there that makes it sound like if you forget to get condoms into the bedroom, then you're a bad person, which is also a little dangerous, because sometimes people do get a little forgetful with latex and everything. So again, don't get caught up in the fact that this mistake happened. Just make sure that next time you're better prepared, and take responsibility for the fact that the situation may have stressed you out, may have stressed your partner out. Find a calm way to sort of sit down and have that conversation so you'll learn from it and grow from it. And don't get like so worried about the anxiety of performing itself that you can't process feedback or can't grow from the situation.
You mentioned about taking care of like your like pre and post sex, like taking care of like your
Mm.
partner and just like having those conversations. So, I feel like mental health and emotional well-being plays a lot of role in that. So, what do you think is the role of like mental health and like your emotions or feelings when it comes to like experiencing pleasure?
I think mental health is a huge part of it. Whether you're a queer person or not, whether you're having premarital sex or not, it doesn't matter. It's a huge part because even if you are someone who grew up with a lot of self-esteem and a lot of confidence, that act of being naked with another person is still very vulnerable. You can you can spend your entire teenage life thinking that you are the sexiest person on the planet, and when the moment comes for you to take your clothes off in front of a stranger, there will still be a little bit of doubt. That's just like, you like what you see. Now I'll continue. It's okay. So that vulnerability will still be there no matter how good looking you think you are or how good you feel about yourself. And so in that way, I think mental health and general emotional well-being plays a huge role. And then depending on how the experience makes you feel, depending on how much you feel like your partner was really listening to you and connecting with you and prioritizing your pleasure as well, that will then affect the way you feel after the encounter, where you're just like, acha, this was a great one, but I wish this person had spent more time with me, or I wish that, she didn't immediately get up and put her clothes on and leave. I wish we had like a few more minutes to chill together. So I think a lot of that also, then it's very intricate process, and the tiniest things that in the moment may feel like, it's not a big deal, can come back up for you later and saying, but why didn't you stay for coffee after? Why did you not say my name? Why did you call me that other new name that you've never used before that moment? Stuff like that, they're very, very strongly connected.
So much
Yeah.
pressure put on like bodies. Like there are times when people don't really like to like take off clothes also during sex. Like they'll maybe take off their pants,
Yeah.
but they let their
Yeah.
top stay. And then I feel like in that moment their partner needs to like give a little bit of reassurance and comfort them that it's okay, it's chill, you don't have to. It's not like a biggie. But I feel like those kind of things definitely do happen. And uh, so I feel like, when do you think is a good
Yeah.
time for individuals to sort of like seek professional help?
Maybe the people in your life are not able to provide in that moment, or they do not know more about your identity to be able to support you the way you need to. It's okay if you just want to seek help. You don't have to wait for things to become extremely bad or extremely scary to justify your desire to get help. So there's no wrong time. But I do think one important facet, and this is something that I also learned because of my own experiences with, going to therapy and sometimes demanding from my therapist that she give me a quick answer so I know what the issue is and I can quickly solve it and all, is that the solution should not be about having a name for the problem so that you can make yourself feel worse. The strategy to find it because you want to have a stronger relationship with yourself. Don't, like, I have seen other people who are trying therapy just for their partner's sake or for their parents' sake or for someone else's sake. And I don't think that works as effectively, because after a certain point you're just like, क्यों कर रहा हूँ मैं इनके लिए, like, I don't want to do this, why should I do it for you? I feel like the brain starts resisting after a certain point because it feels like you're doing something you don't need to do. But when you take a step back and find a reason to do it for yourself, when, say, it's not that, acha, I want to last longer in bed because my partner is telling me to, versus I want to last longer in bed because I feel like I can. I just don't understand why it's not happening with my body. And I just want to understand why. And then if you want to seek help about understanding your body or understanding what you can do differently in the bedroom to be able to navigate that scenario that you want to play out, that that's a kinder way or a kinder time for you to go and seek help and look for these answers and have these conversations. But there needs to be a reason for you when you decide to get help, and not doing it as some kind of favor or politeness towards somebody else, because those strategies usually don't last very long and you will feel disheartened or discouraged after some time. But it's much easier to sort of commit to these programs or any plans of any kind of therapy and support if you feel like this is something you're doing for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I also think like it can be very helpful. Like for instance, when if you're going through like let's say depression or anxiety, I think it does affect your sexual life. It does affect the way you experience pleasure or the lack of. So I feel like getting the right help, it really sort of works. And I feel like it's not just about getting the right help and all, but it's also about you need to communicate that to your partner, right? That this is happening. It has nothing to do with you per se, but I just need to take some time out. But sometimes it's so hard to like even just say that I need a time out because you feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me, or that I'm broken, or like so something has gone terribly, like something's gone terribly off the track. But it's very normal, and I think we all experience it from time to time, and it's okay to go to a professional health every now and then to just have a check in. I think it's important for everybody, but I feel like unfortunately even with that there's so much like stigma involved that people aren't able to like take that step, and sometimes people just get stuck in a very vicious cycle, which is can be very hard to like can be very hard to get
Yeah,
out of. But yeah, I would highly recommend
yeah.
if people to definitely go and seek any kind of like counselor.
Help, and help is something we typically think of ki you need help when you're in a bad place, which again is not true. You can just go to a therapist because there's some kind of communication that you want to figure out. There's some kind of there's something you want to discuss with your partner, and you just need someone to sort of help you build a script or build a structure for how do I bring this up with my partner in a way that won't make them feel like a bad partner to me, or make them feel like I'm not attracted to them. Like your example, right? Of say if a person wants to take a step back or take a break from sex, what are ways in which you can communicate that to your partner without making them feel like the attraction is gone? That is also something that a mental health professional or a counselor might be able to help you on and give you some ideas on. But it doesn't have to mean that you have to have the conversation with your partner alone and things will get a little difficult, and after months and months of the both of you not knowing what's happening and whether you all are able to communicate effectively or not, then you have to go and get help. It doesn't have to be that kind of process.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I feel like the point where you mentioned that you don't have to wait, you can just go. I really agree with that because I feel like there's this very bad mentality in our culture that we wait for things to get bad. Like even for example, like with STIs and all, right? Like people will feel symptoms, but they won't do it. They're like, no, I'll just wait it out, and then it does like eventually it gets a little bit much more difficult to deal with. And it would not have been the case if you would have just gone before. But there's just so much like stigma. There's so much misinformation. For example, if people Google HIV, right, one of the first thing that like pops up is that it's there's no cure for it, or it's something like that. But that's not. While there is no cure for it, it's extremely treatable and it's extremely manageable. And that is
Yeah.
information which unfortunately people don't get out. They don't seek the right help, and then it sort of progresses to AIDS, and then it becomes a little like becomes much more harder to deal with, which would not have been the case if people had just gone before. So I very strongly agree, like when like people just wait and wait, not just even case of STIs, but even with mental health, people just like wait out a lot. And it's really, I feel like it's okay to, even if you feel like the slightest of things sometimes, it's okay to
Yeah.
just go and like check in. So while we are on
Yeah.
this, Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I just wanted to add that I think that fear also of getting tested comes on multiple levels, right? One is I don't know what the clinic is going to be like when I go to get tested. I don't know what the doctor is going to be like and what kind of questions they'll ask me. I don't know how much it will cost. If I go to the clinic that is in my area, will someone recognize me there? Will they gossip with the people in the community? Will my family find out about this? So there's that anxiety of everything that happens before the appointment or during the appointment. And then I think there's also that anxiety that comes later that, acha, if there is a positive, if I test positive on something, then what happens? Right? There are still a lot of people who believe that once you test positive for an STI, your sex life is just over. Bas, khatam. Like you not only have to abstain from sex while you are healing and recovering, but you can't safely have sex for the rest of your life, which is such a dangerous myth to have around sex and sexuality. We have people who are obviously alive in the country with HIV positive results, and they are being able to live full lives. That conversation of understanding that after a certain time period you get the second test to make sure what is happening, what the viral load is like, how much the viral load has to come down to ensure that you can then have safe sex with other people again in your life, and you have to keep an eye on the load to make sure it stays below that limit. These conversations are just not happening, and that makes that fear of HIV or any STI for that matter so much higher. Because then, when you make people feel so ashamed of themselves or so scared of the STI that they may have gotten, the chances of them feeling comfortable to pick up the phone and tell their partners that this is happening also decreases. They don't want to have that conversation. And I understand that because we've created such a scary culture. You are terrified about your partner leaving you or judging you if you tell them that you have a positive result. And then if they test positive and they blame you, or if they get, like violent or something with you, that's also scary. And that's entirely because we've built this culture where we've said that STIs are bad, therefore people with STIs are also bad. And that is a problem that needs to be fixed so that people can get tested more regularly and say, oh, okay, again with the, sorry, I'm very stuck on the road crossing wala image, but like you cross the road, you may have fallen down, it's okay. That happens. It's a very natural part of the process to be at risk of anything. And with sex, unfortunately, one of the risks is STIs. But you don't feel ashamed when you fall down and hurt your knee and your knee gets a little infected. That time it's very clear, okay, my skin is infected, I need to get some ointments, I need to get some antibiotics, I need to figure out what's happening, and the problem will be fixed in some time, and I'll figure it out, and I will walk again, I will cross the road again. But that mindset is just not something we exercise when it comes to sex and sexuality, and we really really need to tell people this.
I fully I cannot agree with you more. And I think what also happens is, right, because you're so scared of like a positive result, you might not tell your partner who also might be positive, and then they might go and have sex with other people, and then it might, like, it could have like been contained, it could have been like dealt with easily and just. But I completely understand it's extremely hard to like, have that conversation with your partner that, I might have tested positive, and but it's, while I do, it's a very difficult conversation because of so much stigma, but I also feel like you just have to get it's. I feel like people need to, our culture needs to change in a way, the way we look at it. It should be like, okay, I have tested positive for an STI. I need to get some medicines like you would do for anything else, like for a cold, cough, fever, and that's just about it. And then you can just go on living your life. Like it does not have to
Yeah.
mean like the world ends. A lot of people, yeah, it's a very tough and tricky situation to be around. And on that note, I would ask you, like, what do you think are ways or people can sort of approach? Like, I know a lot of people feel anxious asking, or they feel a little shy asking their partners, maybe we should get tested before we have sex. Or let's
Hmm.
say they've had sex, and after sex they're like, you know what, maybe we should get tested if they have like multiple partners, because it's healthy and it's like a part of being sexually active. So how do you think people can sort of approach that and also deal with the like we were talking about, right? The anxiety of just like having that conversation or just talking about it, especially with like new partners or even like long term partners for that for that matter.
I actually think that this conversation is very, very important for people who have, who are monogamous and have long term partners as well. Because again, I think that there's this misconception that only people who have multiple partners, or only people who are engaging in casual sex, or worse, only people who have queer sex are, at risk of these things. But you can very, very much be having sex with your husband of many, many years, and maybe your intention is to, get pregnant or something. And even in that scenario where everything is so traditional, you can still be at risk of any STIs or any kind of infection. And I think taking that weight away from what the meaning of an infection truly is, because when it's sex related, there's so much morality attached to it. That needs to sort of be taken away a little bit. So if you can take some, if you can find resources online or even trusted friends in your life who can sit with you and normalize the conversations of these risks, like, accidental pregnancies can happen, STIs can happen. It's all a natural part of the process. And the idea is not to avoid them perfectly, because you can't be that perfect. You're only a human being. The idea is to be prepared for these situations and to go and seek the solution that will be the most appropriate in making sure that you are healthy and safe. So I think being able to first justify it in your head, so that you know that this is a need that you have for yourself, and you will not deny yourself of a test just because someone else is not comfortable with you getting tested. I think that is a great starting point, because you need to be able to have that support for yourself and have your back and say that no, even if my partner thinks it's not romantic that I want to go get tested, I have decided I want to get myself tested. So I will do this for me, because I want to make sure I am okay and my body is okay. And hopefully you are surrounded by loved ones who also feel that way about themselves. And so when you broach the subject of testing, and regularly testing, because ideally it should be done multiple times over an interval of 6 months,
Yep.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
6 months, I would
Um,
say.
yeah, so hopefully you have those kinds of people in your life, right, who understand that they need to look after themselves too. That when you say that that you want both of you to go and get tested together, you're not implying that there's something, shady that they're doing, or that they don't look after themselves or anything. You're not making a moral judgment on their life. You're saying, I just want to make sure my body has all the medical support and the healthcare support that it needs, and I care about you. So I want to make sure that you have the support that you need as well. Do you want to get this done together? Um, I know that this is a little bit of an idea that takes some time getting used to, but I have a few friends who have turned STI testing into like a date idea. So when they just start seeing new people, there's this whole conversation of, like understanding each other, getting to know what the other person wants and everything. And they meet for the first time and figure out whether, there's attraction, do we want to have sex, what is this, and all of that. And after a little bit of time has passed before they feel ready to have their sexual encounter, they're just like, do you want us to go to a clinic together and we can get tested, and that can be a date idea? And I thought that was very cute, that there were people out there who were trying to make, STI testing feel more romantic and cute and date like. um, so I think that's an interesting way also to bond with a person. And when you walk out of that clinic, if one of you or if both of you test positive for something, the idea is not कि तूने क्या किया था लाइफ में या फिर मैंने क्या किया था लाइफ में for us to reach this point. It's more about oh, okay, now I know what your body needs from me for me to look after you, and you have the information that you need to look after me. We're closer now because we can offer this kind of care to each other. And of course it's very hard to find partners who are that like synced with you, or who strongly believe in these things just like you do. But in that case, then it helps to maybe look for friends. If the person cannot come with you to the clinic, maybe because it's an online friend you've made, then you can reach out to them and say, hey, can you stay online with me while I go to the clinic because I'm very nervous. Ask them to stay online, call them before the visit, call them after the testing, stuff like that. Just don't be afraid to look for connections in the world that give you the kind of care and comfort that you need to be able to feel good about yourself. Um, if it comes in the form of romantic relationships or just sexual relationships or friends or internet friends, that's completely okay too. There is nothing wrong with you seeking love and support in whatever way makes you feel more comfortable in this world and makes you feel safer in this world.
I completely agree. Also, I feel like the date idea, I feel like that's extremely cute, and I feel like that takes a lot of pressure off. Like because I feel like the idea of getting tested for STIs or even just the mere words I feel like are so daunting for people, right? So I feel like when you make it like a fun activity that you can do for each other and something that will help you all get more closer, I think it's a more healthy way to sort of approach the topic, and also a really great way to like indulge in safe sex. Where,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's like really great advice. And on that note, I think I would like to conclude this webinar session. And Tanisha, I had so much fun chatting with you, and it was so great. And there were just so many fun learnings from it, and I really, 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 really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for taking time out. Is there anything that you would like to say before we close the session?
No, I had a lot of fun, and just to reiterate that when it comes to testing or diagnosis or conversations even around mental health and seeking that kind of support, there's nothing wrong with you thinking about yourself as an individual before you think of yourself as one half of a relationship or one part of a larger relationship or community. Because offering care and support to others or asking them to care and support for you usually begins with you giving that care to yourself or understanding what kind of care you need. So it's okay to seek that kind of time and space in your life where all you do is understand yourself a little better and learn to be your own friend, because the better you get at being your own friend, the easier it gets to sort of ask people to be good friends and good lovers to you as well. So that's all I wanted to add.
That was a lovely bit of advice. I thank you so much, Tanisha.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.